The Secret History of the Bilderberg Group, the Shadow Government. Hello and welcome back to Driftwood Histories. Tonight, our journey takes us away from the ancient rituals and Gothic crypts of the past. We are stepping into the modern world, into the hushed, heavily guarded corridors of five-star hotels and secluded luxury resorts. We are seeking a different kind of secret society, one with no ancient oaths, no mystical symbols, but perhaps with more real-world power than all the others combined. Every year, a group of the world's most powerful people, presidents and prime ministers, royalty and tech billionaires, banking titans and media moguls disappear from their public schedules. They converge for a 3-day, off-the-record conference, a meeting so secret that its location is often unknown until the last moment, and whose proceedings are never revealed. They call themselves the Bilderberg Group. Are they, as they claim, simply a private forum for fostering dialogue and understanding between Europe and North America? Or are they, as their critics have long insisted, a shadow world government, a secretive cabal where the global agenda is set and the fate of nations is decided, far from the eyes of the public they are meant to serve? So, find your comfortable place. Let the noise of the 21st century fall away. Close your eyes, and allow my voice to be your guide as we attempt to part the velvet curtain on the world's most secretive and influential annual meeting. Our story begins not with a conspiracy, but with the anxieties of a world divided by a new kind of war. To understand the birth of the Bilderberg Group, we must journey back to the tense, anxious, and deeply polarized atmosphere of the early 1950s. The world had just emerged from the unprecedented devastation of World War II, a conflict that had shattered empires and redrawn the map of the globe. But the fragile peace that followed was not a true peace. It was the beginning of a new, ideological conflict, a long twilight struggle between two superpowers and two opposing ways of life. This was the dawn of the Cold War. The Iron Curtain, as Winston Churchill so famously described it, had descended across Europe, dividing the continent between the communist East, a bloc of nations under the absolute control of Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union, and the capitalist West, a collection of recovering democracies under the powerful and sometimes overwhelming influence of the United States. In Western Europe, a complex and dangerous sentiment was beginning to fester. While there was immense gratitude for the American intervention that had helped to liberate the continent from Nazism, and for the Marshall Plan that was helping to rebuild its shattered economies, there was also a growing sense of resentment and fear. Many Europeans, particularly on the political left but also among conservatives, were wary of America's immense economic, cultural, and military dominance. They feared becoming mere satellite states in a new, American-led empire. A wave of anti-Americanism was spreading, fueled by concerns over American foreign policy and the perceived arrogance of its newfound global power. This growing rift, this transatlantic misunderstanding, was a source of great concern for many Western leaders. They feared it was a profound vulnerability, a crack in the newly formed Atlantic Alliance, NATO, that the Soviet Union, with its sophisticated propaganda machine, would be all too happy to exploit. They believed that if the West was divided, it would fall. One man who was particularly, and perhaps prophetically, concerned by this trend was Josef Riedinger. Riedinger was a fascinating and somewhat shadowy Polish political exile who moved in the highest circles of European power. He was a man who seemed to be everywhere at once, a political operator of the old school. He had been an advisor to the Polish government in exile during the war, and he was a passionate and tireless advocate for European unification. He was one of the founding fathers of what would eventually become the European Union. Riedinger, a staunch anti-communist, believed that the only way to counter the growing division between Europe and North America, and to effectively combat the spread of Soviet influence, was to bring the most influential leaders from both sides of the Atlantic together. But he did not envision a formal, stuffy diplomatic conference, with its public posturing and its carefully worded communiques. He imagined something different, an informal, private, and completely off-the-record gathering, where these powerful figures could speak with absolute candor, as private individuals, not as representatives of their governments or corporations. He envisioned a place where personal relationships could be forged, where trust could be built, and where a common understanding of the world's problems could be reached, far from the glare of the media and the constraints of their official positions. He shared his idea with several powerful figures who moved in his circles. One of the first was Paul Ridgkins, the then head of the massive multinational corporation Unilever. Ridgkins, with his vast international business network, immediately saw the value in such a forum. But the key figure, the man who would provide the royal patronage and the public face for this secret endeavor, was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Prince Bernhard was a charismatic and well-connected royal. A German-born prince who had married into the Dutch royal family, he had served as a pilot in the Royal Air Force during the war and had become a respected international figure. He was a man who was comfortable in the worlds of both business and politics, and he embraced Riedinger's idea with enthusiasm. With the influential backing of Prince Bernhard, and with the quiet, behind-the-scenes supportive figures within the nascent American intelligence community including Walter Bedell Smith, the then director of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, who saw the group as a useful, informal channel for strengthening the Western alliance. The plan was set in motion. An organizing committee was formed, and invitations were sent out. The first meeting was scheduled for the late spring of 1954. The location chosen was the secluded and luxurious Hotel de Bilderberg, in the small Dutch town of Oosterbeek. The hotel was owned by a friend of Prince Bernhard's, and its remote location made it ideal for a private, secure gathering. It is from this first, elegant meeting place that the group takes its unassuming, and now infamous name. That first guest list, for the meeting held from May 29th to May 31st, 1954, became the template for all future meetings. It was a carefully curated, and deliberately balanced, mix of the European and North American elite. It included 50 delegates from 11 Western European countries and 11 Americans. They were a cross-section of the establishment. From the world of politics, there were figures like the Belgian Prime Minister Paul van Zeeland. From the world of finance, there were prominent bankers and industrialists. From the world of labor, there were influential trade union leaders. And from the world of academia, there were respected historians and economists. The American delegation included figures like C.D. Jackson, a special assistant to President Eisenhower and a key figure in American psychological warfare operations, and David Rockefeller, then a young banker who would go on to become one of the most powerful and enduring figures in the group's history. The agenda for that first meeting was focused squarely on the great anxieties of the day. The official topics included the attitude towards communism and the Soviet Union, the attitude towards dependent areas and peoples overseas, and the attitude towards European integration and the European defense community. The central, overarching theme was how to strengthen the Atlantic Alliance and win the Cold War. The meeting was, by all accounts, a resounding success. The participants, freed from the constraints of public diplomacy, engaged in lively and brutally honest debate. They found the off-the-record discussions so valuable and enlightening that they unanimously agreed that the conference should be made an annual event. A permanent steering committee was formed, with Prince Bernhard appointed as its chairman, a role he would hold for over 2 decades. Joseph Riedinger was appointed as the permanent secretary. The Bilderberg meetings, as they came to be known, were born. A silent, powerful, and deeply secretive fixture in the calendar of the global elite had been established. The locations would change each year, moving between secluded luxury hotels in a dozen different countries, from a chateau in France to a lakeside resort in Switzerland, to a heavily secured hotel in Virginia. The security would always be immense, often involving local and national police forces, intelligence agencies, and elite private security details that would turn the host hotel into a veritable, impenetrable fortress for the duration of the 3-day conference. The guest list would be by invitation only, personally curated each year by the steering committee. For decades, the list itself was a closely guarded secret. However, in response to growing public pressure from a small but persistent group of journalists and, later, the power of the internet to expose their gatherings, the group has, in recent years, begun to publish the list of attendees and the main topics of discussion on its official website. It is a small, and some would say, token concession to the age of transparency, an attempt to quell the ever-growing storm of conspiracy theories that surround it. To read through the attendee lists of the past 70 years is to read a roadmap of global power. Future world leaders are often invited just before they ascend to the highest offices, a fact that has become the cornerstone of many conspiracy theories. A young and relatively unknown governor of Arkansas named Bill Clinton attended the 1991 meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany. A year later, he was elected President of the United States. Tony Blair, then a rising star in the British Labour Party, attended in 1993. 4 years later, he was Prime Minister. Angela Merkel of Germany, Emmanuel Macron of France, and many other European leaders are all said to have been vetted at a Bilderberg meeting shortly before their rise to power. The list of corporate, financial, and tech titans is even more staggering. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Eric Schmidt of Google, and Peter Thiel of PayPal have all been attendees. The CEOs of BP, Shell, and other energy giants are regulars. The chairman of Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and Deutsche Bank are frequently present. The editors and proprietors of the world's most influential media outlets, like The Economist, The Washington Post, and The Wall Street Journal, are also invited, a fact that critics point to as a reason for the lack of mainstream media coverage of the event. And a quiet but consistent presence is always felt from the heads of intelligence agencies like the CIA and MI6, from high-ranking NATO officials, and from members of the great European royal families and the American Rockefeller dynasty. It is precisely this incredible, annual concentration of political, financial, and industrial power, meeting in absolute secrecy, that fuels the theories that this is more than just an informal discussion forum, that this is, in fact, a shadow world government. So what happens inside these heavily guarded conference rooms? What is the purpose of this profound secrecy? And is the Bilderberg Group, as its most fervent critics have claimed for decades. A true shadow world government, a secret cabal that plots the course of our lives without our knowledge or our consent. The entire event, from the first coffee meeting to the final dinner, is conducted under the strict Chatham House rule. This is not a mystical or ancient oath, but a real-world rule of engagement, first established in 1927 at the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London, which is headquartered at Chatham House. The rule is designed to facilitate open and honest discussion on controversial and sensitive topics. The rule stipulates that when a meeting is held under its protection, participants are free to use the information they receive, but they are strictly forbidden from revealing the identity or the affiliation of the speaker who said it, nor that of any other participant who took part in that particular discussion. It creates a perfect bubble of privacy. It allows for a level of candor that is impossible in any public forum. The organizers of the Bilderberg Group argue that this secrecy is not sinister. It is essential. It is what makes the discussions so uniquely valuable. A sitting head of state can, in theory, speak with brutal honesty about their country's domestic challenges or their true feelings about a rival nation, without worrying about causing a diplomatic incident or a damaging headline the next day. A CEO of a major tech company can speculate on the future of artificial intelligence, including its potential dangers, without spooking the stock market or alerting competitors. A central banker can discuss a potential financial crisis without inadvertently causing one. The rule, they claim, allows the participants to speak as individuals, as thinkers, not just as representatives of their governments or corporations. It allows for genuine debate, not public posturing. But that same privacy, that same deliberate opacity, is what makes the group so deeply suspect to the public. In a functioning democracy, we expect our leaders to be transparent and accountable. The idea that they are having private, unminuted meetings with unelected corporate and financial titans, discussing issues like the future of work, the geopolitics of energy, the rise of China, or the challenges of artificial intelligence issues that affect the lives of billions is inherently unsettling. It creates an undeniable democratic deficit. It fosters the sense that the real, consequential conversations are happening in rooms we will never see, among people we did not elect, and according to rules that we have no say in. This deep-seated suspicion has been fanned for decades by a small, but incredibly dedicated group of journalists, authors, and activists who have made it their life's work to follow and expose the group. The late journalist Jim Tucker, a man who was, in many ways, the original Bilderberg hunter, spent over 30 years camping outside their chosen hotels. He would cultivate sources among the hotel staff, sift through discarded documents, and try to piece together the guest list and the agenda. In the internet age, this mantle has been taken up by a new generation of activists and independent journalists, most famously the American radio host and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, who, in 2012, led a large and vocal protest outside the Bilderberg meeting in Chantilly, Virginia. And the Spanish author Daniel Estulin, whose books, like the true story of the Bilderberg Group, claim to reveal Bilderberg's secret plan for a one-world government. These critics, and the vast online communities that follow them, argue that the group is not just a talking shop. They believe it is a covert steering committee, a decision-making body for the global elite. They claim, with varying degrees of evidence and speculation, that major global events were first decided, or at least heavily influenced, at Bilderberg meetings. Was the creation of the European Union and the euro single currency, a topic that we know was discussed at Bilderberg for decades before it became a reality, a product of these secret meetings? Was the 1973 oil crisis, which dramatically reshaped the global economy, planned or at least anticipated there? Was the 2003 invasion of Iraq given a quiet nod of approval in a Bilderberg conference room? Proponents of this view see Bilderberg as the true, unelected government of the world, patiently and persistently pushing a consistent globalist agenda. The creation of a one-world currency, the strengthening of international bodies like the United Nations, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization, and the gradual erosion of national sovereignty in favor of a new, global corporate and financial order. The defenders of the group, and many of its attendees who have spoken about it after the fact, dismissed these claims as paranoid fantasy. They insist, time and again, that no votes are ever taken, no formal policy is ever decided, and no resolutions are ever passed. It is, they argue, simply a forum for high-level discussion, a place to exchange ideas, nothing more. However, the late Lord Dennis Healey, a prominent British politician, a longtime member of the Bilderberg Steering Committee, and one of its co-founders, gave a candid interview in his later years that perfectly captures the crucial nuance. When asked if the group's goal was a one-world government, he said, "To say we were striving for a one-world government is exaggerated, but not wholly unfair. Those of us in Bilderberg felt we couldn't go on forever fighting one another for nothing and killing people and rendering millions homeless. So we felt that a single community throughout the world would be a good thing." This is the perspective that is often lost in the noise of grand, sinister conspiracy. The goal may not be a formal new world order ruled by a secret council. But it is a deeply held belief among many in the global elite that a more integrated, cooperative, and centrally managed world governed by what they see as rational, expert-led consensus is better, safer, and more prosperous for everyone. The true power of Bilderberg lies not in secret edicts, but in the subtle and powerful shaping of this elite consensus.
Immagine a scenario.
The head of a major international bank, a prime minister of a G7 nation, and the CEO of a leading artificial intelligence company all attend a Bilderberg meeting. Over 3 days, they listen to off-the-record presentations from the world's top experts on the future of AI. They debate its potential benefits and its existential risks. They build personal relationships over dinner and drinks. When they leave that meeting, they do not have a formal, written plan. But they now share a common understanding of the problem. Their thinking has been aligned. When they return to their respective domains, the banker to his board, the prime minister to her cabinet, the CEO to his company, the decisions they make will now be informed by the shared private consensus. The influence is not through a command, but through a convergence of thought. It is, in a sense, a conspiracy of consensus. The topics discussed at Bilderberg are a mirror of the global anxieties and ambitions of the elite at any given time. In the 1950s and 60s, the agenda was dominated by the Cold War and the containment of communism. In the 1970s, it was the oil shock, the stability of the Middle East, and the challenges to the international financial system. In the 1990s, with the fall of the Soviet Union, the topics shifted to globalization, the rise of the Internet, and the integration of the former Eastern Bloc. In our current century, the agenda reflects our own tumultuous times. Recent meetings have focused on cybersecurity and the threat of information warfare, the geopolitical rise of China and the new great power competition, the disruptive and transformative power of artificial intelligence, the future of work in an age of automation, and, with a deep sense of irony, the rise of populism and the growing public backlash against the very globalist consensus that the Bilderberg Group has helped to build for over half a century. The Bilderberg Group operates at the complex and often blurry intersection of power, wealth, and influence. It is not a formal organization like the United Nations, nor is it a secret society with mystical rituals and ancient oaths like the Freemasons. It is simply and profoundly a network, a fluid, powerful, and deeply private network of the people who, for better or for worse, are already running the world. They may not be a formal shadow government, but they are, without a doubt, a shadow cabinet, a place where the consensus of the powerful is forged, far from the prying eyes and the listening ears of the public they are meant to serve. And so our journey into the quiet, guarded, and deeply influential world of the Bilderberg Group comes to a close. We have traced its origins from the deep anxieties of the Cold War. We have examined its powerful and exclusive membership, and we have explored the profound and persistent controversies that surround its annual, secret meetings. We began our story with the Atlantic Alliance, learning how the fear of a growing rift between a war-torn Europe and a dominant post-war America led figures like the Polish diplomat Josef Riedinger and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands to create a new, private forum for dialogue. We saw how the first meeting, held in 1954 at the secluded Hotel de Bilderberg in the Netherlands, set the template for a new kind of secret gathering, one based not on ancient rituals, but on modern influence. Then, we explored the nature of its secrecy, the Chatham House Rule, and we asked the central question: is this a shadow world government? We saw how its guest list is a veritable roadmap of global power, often including future leaders like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair just before their momentous rise to power. We contrasted the conspiratorial view of Bilderberg as a secret cabal, plotting the course of the world, with the official view of it as a simple, informal talking shop. And in the space between those two extremes, we found a more nuanced truth, that its real power lies not in secret edicts or formal resolutions, but in the subtle and powerful shaping of an elite, global consensus. We learned that by bringing the world's most powerful figures from politics, finance, industry, and technology together in a private, off-the-record setting, the Bilderberg Group creates a shared understanding, a common intellectual framework that quietly, but profoundly influences the decisions they make when they return to their respective domains. The Bilderberg Group is a uniquely modern phenomenon. In an age of supposed transparency, it is a fortress of privacy. It is, in a sense, a secret society without the secrets. We now often know who attends, and we generally know the topics they discuss. The true secret is not what is said, but the very fact that these conversations are happening in private, among an unelected and largely unaccountable global elite. It represents the evolution of hidden power in our globalized age. A power that is less about national interest and more about a shared, transnational, corporate, and political culture. The story of Bilderberg is a story about the nature of influence in the 21st century, and it raises profound and uncomfortable questions about the relationship between power, privacy, and democratic accountability. Thank you for joining me on this voyage with Driftwood Histories. If these stories have stirred your curiosity and soothed your mind, I invite you to subscribe and join our community of fellow travelers. There are many more hidden currents of time, many more secret histories, for us to explore together. Until then, sleep well. May you always question the rooms to which you are not invited, and may your dreams be free. Good night.